Hi, Mike Sandsmark here. I'm the channel manager for the Northwest with Panzura. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate having you with us. We have with us, I'm on the West Coast, but I've got two friends on the East Coast. I have Girish Chanchlani and I've got Eric Quinn. Girish, could you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Girish Chanchlani. I'm a partner solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. I work in the APN storage team, where APN stands for Amazon Partner Network. And we work on this team, we work very closely with our storage partners like Panzura in helping them build solutions on the AWS platform. Happy to be with you guys.
Thanks for joining us, Girish. And Eric, could you introduce yourself too?
Sure. I'm Eric Quinn. I'm the CIO, CTO of the C&S Companies, which is basically about a 550-person engineering firm headquartered in Syracuse, New York, all throughout the continental United States is where we operate. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been with C&S since 1988. So glad to be here. Glad to be a part of this discussion.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you both for joining, Girish and Eric. Thanks so much. So the title of this presentation, What If I Push This Button, can maybe sometimes confuse people. I'm a dad. I've got three daughters. My middle daughter, I think we were at the San Francisco Art Museum, maybe it was the Exploratorium, and there was this gigantic metal transformer. And underneath it said, "Do you dare push this button?" or something like that. And my daughter said, "Can I do it, Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, let's give it a try." So she pushes this button and this transformer box began to move and it kind of came alive. And it was an awesome presentation as this device kind of moved around and did all sorts of really fun and wonderful things. From that point, she was hooked on pushing buttons. She pushed buttons on escalators and things that I didn't want her to do later in life, but she was just loved pushing buttons, and I'd never get in a helicopter or an airplane with her if she was in the cockpit because we might not land. So in the IT world, we actually don't just push buttons to see what will happen. For the most time, IT runs in a business atmosphere and things are very formulated in what we do. We don't just take chances. The question of this whole topic is, what happens if you were to do something different than what you're used to doing before? And I'm going to start here by just looking at this first slide, which talks about the fact that over 700 CIOs were surveyed, and they said up to 44% of their time is spent just keeping things going. And I've seen numbers higher than that. I've seen 60% or more of time and money is spent just keeping things going rather than creating anything new and bringing any new value to the business. So we want to talk about maybe looking at things differently in how you run your business. So I guess, Girish, I'll just ask you, have you seen in your work that this is what happens to customers as well, buried in operations? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see this day in and day out, right? Working with companies of all sizes, right? Until and unless you don't actually start looking at your operations and see where the dollar spend is going, it's very hard to figure out, are you continuing to do what you're used to using your existing skills, right? And are you getting the right bang for your buck? When the time comes to maintenance costs and things like that, that's when CIOs come and realize, okay, why are we spending this much?
Right. Eric, you've probably seen the same thing too, haven't you?
Well, Dynatrace didn't call me, but I will say that this is right on. So you've got your 44%. For some people, it's 50. 44% is an average. But I mean, that's the expectation that's kind of laid on IT people or CIOs and other folks in the technology is, number one, you better keep us up and running. You got to keep us up and running. That requires a couple things. Number one, you got to keep the basics going. That's 44%. But then you've got to figure out how to learn and just keep up with what's happening. One of the things we talked about, Mike, you and I, is man, you can open up any solution and the interface could completely change between yesterday and today. Gmail. I got my mother on Gmail a number of years ago, and the interface completely changes now and then. She says, man, I used to go up top and click on a button when I wanted to start an email. Now I got to go down the bottom, and it's a plus sign. It's not a picture of a pencil. And for some people, that's a simplistic way of looking at how much we need to learn just to maintain, right? So yeah, there's the operations piece, but then there's a maintenance piece for personally being able to keep up with what's going on. That leaves very little time for anything else.
Yeah, that middle point there, it's expected to get worse, right? Things will be upgraded and changed all the time. And some people even have the belief that being a cloud native application is going to take more effort than less effort. And I think we're going to show you here why that's not really the case, that in fact, it can be a lot easier. So that's what we are seeing here from a business perspective. I think we need to kind of look at things from a little bit different way. The people that we hire in our organizations, they're typically smart and curious and inventive. And I'm sure, Eric, you've seen that too, right? These are the type of people that you probably want to have on your team.
They're not the people I want to have. They're the only people I'll even look at. When resumes come in and I interview people, if someone has no vision, if one of the questions I ask is, what project are you most proud of? What have you done in your career that you're most proud of? And I'm not necessarily looking for something that was all that complex. I'm looking for something that was, hey, I did something that no one else was thinking about. I want that inventive, curious person, the person that says, I looked at a problem, I found a brand new solution, and I figured out how to implement that solution in my environment. Hopefully, that's what most people are looking for when they take on IT team members.
And actually, if you think about it from an AWS perspective, that's exactly what they did, right? They really created a whole new business category from a storage perspective. Yet at the same time, while you're looking for really creative people, you also want to have people that aren't like my daughter that just wants to go push buttons radically, right?
That is the massive imbalance of the expectation of the person who's being hired. Because we go through this interview process and I said, what project are you most proud of? And they start getting excited and they talk about this project where they found something new. They latched onto something new. They implemented it in their environment and it was new and exciting and it solved massive problems. What's the expectation from the top down? We want you to do that, but we also want you to not spend any money, right? We want you to, right? Zero spend no more, preferably less than what you were spending last year. Try to use what we already have in place. That's the frugality, the resourcefulness, and whatever you do, don't let anything go down. Well, that's the opposite sometimes of creativity. Right? You want to be creative, you got to break stuff. We've all heard that, right? Fail fast, break stuff and learn and all that. And so what IT people mostly want to do is really on the opposite end of the spectrum of what the expectation of the IT team is internally. The vast majority of the expectation is just keep us going. And we want you to reimagine our entire business at the same time when it comes to technology.
Yeah, very much so. And that dichotomy, if you will, of both the expectations and what the typical skill sets are can certainly be a challenge. To that same point, then, too, if you don't allow them to do certain things, if they're not allowed to use their creativity, right, they can lose interest, they can stagnate. I'm sure you may be, if you haven't seen that internally, you may have experienced that, right, with people or others you know.
Hopefully, like I said, I try to hire good people. I try to keep them engaged and to be creative. But you can only spend so many days keeping a network up and running and taking help desk tickets before you go, what's my purpose in life? Hate to say it that way, but that's the big picture, right? What am I doing here if all I'm doing is break fix? What am I doing here if all I'm doing is making sure I'm running speed tests and throughput tests and packet captures every half hour to make sure everything's up and running? So the distraction, right? We talk about stagnation. Everybody wants to move forward. Not everybody wants to be a manager or a boss, but people want to learn something new, but that's not what's expected of them mostly. Just keep the lights on and keep going. And if you get a chance, change the world. But people want something new. And the distraction is what happens when you don't have the opportunity to do that as a force for good within your organization. So what you end up doing is getting distracted and looking at other places you can be, number one. And number two, looking at what can you do for you personally that might not be in the best interest or might kind of take you out of helping your organization. And it's not bad. Personal development is good, right? We want people to be personally developed, but when it distracts from what you're supposed to be doing, or if it creates something that ends up being detrimental to the organization, then it becomes detrimental to the individual as well. So have to be very careful. There's a fine balance there when it comes to making sure people are, yes, we're keeping the lights on 44%, but we have to figure out a way to optimize and simplify all of those things we do. Make it 40% instead of 44. Get that 9% back and give that to the people. And that's when they can be creative.
Yeah, which is a perfect segue because of this mismatch, this conflict. If you try to change it, sometimes you can have challenges. So you want to make a good choice as you're moving, and one that is a planned event, right? One that is tested and proven. So pioneers get arrows, right? And so you want to kind of do things in a smart way as you move forward. And so that's why we want to talk about the three S3, right? The S3 bucket almost, but simple, secure, and smart, right? So we want to have an elegantly simple solution that is both tremendously secure and creates a lot of potential for flexibility and for new technologies to be implemented. That's really the premise of what this discussion is and what's important from a customer perspective. So I'm going to talk a little bit from a technical side about what it is that Panzura does, and then we'll weave into what AWS does that really is the backbone of everything that we do. And then we'll come back and circle back for another discussion with Eric. Here's a typical business with 5 locations. You've got silos of information here in 5 different locations, and maybe you're backing it up to one central area, but you've got a challenge of information that you'd like to have in different places that you'd rather have in a consolidated space rather than in 5 different locations. So you've got all these silos of information with you. You've got storage on premise, you've got backup system, and you've got networking, and this is tremendously complex to take care of. And so what we want to do is make it a very simple process. And this simple process is one whereby you have a cloud storage bucket that's out in AWS. And then what Panzura has are these filers that we can put either on premise or in the cloud. And these filers then make the data that is in AWS much more active at a local level. So it gives you both global file locking, data consistency, and local file operation performance. So at the local level, you get the performance of what you had on premise before with your cloud object store in a centralized location like at AWS. And the Panzura filers, we've got 30 different patents where we have created this specific software that then provides basically an enterprise class global file system. And it sends information back and forth to that central AWS repository. It sends it deduplicated, compressed, and encrypted both in flight and encrypted within AWS. So it's doubly encrypted, if you will. It's very fast performance at the customer level, at the local level, and yet you've got what I'd call a conservative file locking system, whereby we are very sure that the information that we have in the global file store is correct, and you don't have multiple different versions of the same copy. You've got one copy, one single copy of your information. I want to mention too that the Panzura filers can either be in VMware environments or Hyper-V, but so that they can also be in the cloud. Those Panzura filers can also be in the cloud if we need for HA purposes. And the next thing is it's tremendously secure. Panzura's software is ransomware immutable, so it's an immutable architecture. We don't do destructive writes, we only do additive writes. So when the bad guy here tries to encrypt some software and try to add some additional items, we have a very granular process whereby we keep track of all of the information being written in new files. And since we don't do destructive writes, we only do additive writes. If the bad guy comes and says, hey, I've encrypted your files, we just skip back to the point of where the encryption started and wipe it away, and we've got our clean files. Panzura has never had one customer pay ransomware for data that they had within a Panzura environment, and that's pretty darn cool. Eric, do you have anything you add? Have you heard of any customers that have been attacked by ransomware or challenges on that level?
Not at a massive scale. I don't know anybody personally. Have I heard of people? Absolutely. Have I seen people get stuff back after being ransomware encrypted from Panzura? Absolutely. And over the years, again, I've been a Panzura customer for 8.5 years now, so it's been quite a while that I've been in the environment. But yeah, we've had small portions of our environment get attacked by ransomware, and it took minutes to resolve and get back to where we were. So yeah, it's really powerful against ransomware, but the security portion as well, especially these days, right? Everybody's looking at the new Department of Defense, CMMC requirements, which is still kind of in limbo in the government, but all of this is coming, and Panzura plays into this. And it's important to have something like this to protect your environment, not just protect it, but be able to stand it back up if something does happen.
Yeah, we have a business relationship with Varonis where we've integrated our files with a system called Panzura Data Services that allows you to actually see into your network and see what's happening with your files, and then snap back and easily, quickly find where the ransomware came in and where you can get past it and eliminate it. So With that, I kind of wanted to move over to a portion where we're going to talk with Girish about AWS's geographical regions, all of your storage locations, your compute locations around the world. If you could talk to us a little bit about that, Girish.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. So, as you highlighted in your previous slide, cloud storage is central component of the Panzura solution. So let's talk a little bit about the global infrastructure, right, which basically enables our customers to build these global file systems. So shown here in the slide, our cloud computing resources are hosted in multiple locations worldwide. And these locations are composed of AWS regions and availability zones. Now, the regions are highlighted on the slide by the blue and orange dots. And the blue ones indicate the current operating regions, and the orange dots highlight the ones that will be coming online in the near future. So at present, we have 25 regions spread out across the world and a total of 81 availability zones within those regions. Now, in addition to this, we have announced 7 additional regions that will be coming online in the near future. So you can choose to use our services available in any of these regions, that are closer to you for minimum latency and optimal performance.
That is impressive. And obviously, the thousands of customers using them too is proof in itself. If we look, here's a little bit greater depth of knowledge on what goes on within those regions. Want to discuss that?
Sure. So, diving a bit deeper here into the design of a region is composed of multiple locations, right? And each of these locations are called as availability zones. So a very easy way to think of an availability zone is to think of it as a data center, right? So it's a collection of data centers. Now, these AZs within a region are separated from each other by a meaningful distance to guard against failures. So if you look at, some of our regional services like S3, where we keep data spread out across a region, across these, AZs for maximum resiliency. So for example, if one of these AZs was affected, your regional services like S3 continue to be available. And you as a customer or an end user, you do not have to do anything specific here. All this happens in the background, and the routing and the failover, etc., is automatically managed by us.
Automagically. I know you said automatically, but I'm going to say automagically. That's really super cool. All that great fault tolerance and such, that's just pretty impressive. So here's a little bit more information about what you guys do, right?
Yeah, so this dives a bit deeper into the individual AZ design. Each AZ is a fully isolated partition of the AWS global infrastructure. This means that it is, as I mentioned, it is physically separated from the other AZs by a very meaningful distance, such as many miles. Each AZ has its own power infrastructure. Now, these AZs give customers the ability to operate production applications, and that are much highly available, fault tolerant and scalable than would be possible if you were to run it from a single data center. All these AZs are interconnected by a high bandwidth, low latency networking connection that is fully redundant. And this provides high throughput, low latency networking between the AZs.
Very, very impressive. I know it's a very mature data center process, which for our customers, if you think about it, if you've got a very mature infrastructure, such as the AWS platform, your data is backed up in numerous different locations. And then you've got the speed and productivity of the Panzura filers in your local regions or in your local offices. And that then creates the local performance with the backing up of a data center that is second to none, from what I can say. The next part of this is simple and smart, secure. The smart part really has to do with if you have all of your data now, and you can see here in this diagram, we've got San Francisco, and we've got Chicago, and we've got London, and then you've got the cloud. It's a very smart architecture from a business standpoint. You can put all of your data into the AWS knowledge store, and you don't have to migrate any of your data. You don't have to worry about copying your data. Really no human intervention. Your information is secured, and you don't have to worry about local application dependencies because everything will be running then in the cloud. And then you can begin to leverage cloud native applications as a result that are running in AWS, where you can really better using machine learning and AI applications to really analyze your data in a deeper way. And Eric, this is where we get back to the smart part or the creative part. Your people can actually, if your data is in one central repository, you can do different things with that data than you could if it was in multiple different locations, correct?
Yeah, let me tell you a story. If I go back in time, I started here a long time ago. I said that at the very beginning here at this engineering firm. I started out in 1988. In the 1980s, CAD was coming into play. When I made my way into IT, I said one of the things I was going to do, I was going to make it so that everybody in every office had the same experience, because what we were seeing was even though we had some best in class Gartner Magic Quadrant up and to the right type of stuff, stuff in place, the experience wasn't the same in every office. And I said that someday what I was going to do was find a solution that made the experience the same in every single office. And Panzura did that for me. So back in, started talking with them in about 2011, 2012, finally deployed in 2013. And what it has done, when you look at this graphic and you see that funnel of stuff in the very middle on the blue cloud, all of that is every single file I have. Every piece of unstructured data I have is in that funnel for my company, for C&S. What has happened now is that every single person in my organization has access to that file at local speed, at LAN speed, as we say in the IT world. LAN is LAN speed. They have it in local speed and they have access to everything. What does that mean? How does that make it smart? That means I can have a civil engineer in San Diego, California, working on a project that's happening in Syracuse, New York. And I can have someone who is an environmental specialist in Cleveland, Ohio, working on a project that's happening in Orlando, Florida. I do not need to hire more people. I don't have to have an environmental engineer working in Orlando to work on that project in Orlando. And I don't have to do tape backups, and I don't have to UPS stuff and FedEx stuff on tapes and CDs and thumb drives. It's available to everybody all the time in real time with file locking, with the security of file compression, deduplication, and encryption from end to end. And like I said, people are seeing it in real time. It takes seconds to open no matter where you are. That is the value of Panzura. That's what makes it smart.
It really does bring that local feeling and that local availability. And the other cool thing is you can maybe see from this graphic, the view from a customer perspective is exactly the same in every location. So you don't have different file structures in one office and another. So if a person from your office was to travel to another location and they want to go find something, it's in the same spot that it is no matter where they're at, right?
That's exactly right.
It just makes it so elegant from a customer perspective because your people don't have to learn different ways to do things in different areas. No matter where they are, it's always the same with a global file system that is tremendously robust, as Girish was mentioning, and then very active at the local level, right? Very fast so that, and everybody can then see their data. From a business perspective, it allows you now to do more creative things and your people to think more creatively rather than working on all the mundane stuff.
That's right. Like I said, you have everybody who needs to have access to something has access to it right now.
Here's what I wanted to do is just to kind of recap what we had said. The solution that we're talking about, a Panzura solution in conjunction with AWS, is very simple, very secure, and very smart. It gives your customers, your employees within a company, a very elegant solution to do their business in a creative fashion and not worry about business processes, all the mundane things behind it. They can actually free their minds up to do creative things.
If you let me just to say one thing. So the name of the webinar was What Happens When I Push That Button? And that got me thinking. So everybody has seen the advertisement from the office supply store, right? The easy button, right?
Yeah.
You get the easy button. And people say, okay, you know, what is the easy button? And for that store, it's like, hey, just give us a call. We'll sell you whatever you need to make something easier. That's what they consider the easy button. But as I thought about it, Mike, over the years, just recently within our lifetimes, we saw one of the most amazing easy buttons that's ever been created, right? So I have my smartphone here, and there used to be a button right there. There's not a button now, but there used to be one button on the face of that smartphone. And you say, what does that button do? Well, it does a lot of things. It's simple, number one, but it will do many, many things. It's a smart button. It allows you to get in and out and go different places. And there was a point when that button would read my fingerprint. Now the whole thing reads my face, but that button would read my fingerprint. So it was secure. It was smart because it allowed me to do different things. It certainly was simple. Who would have guessed that one of the most powerful tools to come along in our lifetime would have one button, right? That doesn't make any sense because every time we build something, we build it more and more complex. And so when we look at what Panzura has done and what AWS has done over the years, this is just within the last decade, right? What it's done is it's taken all of those things. It's taken the buttons that we needed to do tape backups and to do offsite backups, and it's taken the buttons that we've needed to have VMs and to do backups and to have stand-up network infrastructure, and it's put it in one place and it's made it extremely simple. I don't worry about Panzura. I don't have to walk into work and worry that, okay, how do I administer Panzura today? I don't even think about it. It's like a black box in the corner, or it's like a phone that I know is going to run when I push the button, right? It's just sitting there running, doing its thing. The back end of my Panzura is AWS. I can tell you, in many, many compliments to AWS on this, I've been on Panzura for 8.5 years. It was January 2013 when we deployed Panzura. And I can tell you that in that amount of time, because people say, well, what happens if you get disconnected, the cloud goes down, this and that. I can tell you that in over those 8.5 years, I think we've had about 1.5 hours of downtime total altogether from AWS. It's been absolutely astounding what AWS has been able to do. And again, the whole process is so simple, right? I appreciate that AWS has about 112 different things that I can do within AWS. With Panzura, I need one. I need the S3 bucket, which is one of the first and most simple things AWS has ever done. It's also one of the most powerful. Girish certainly spoke into that when he talked about the availability zone and what that meant for having immutable data, or data just having that availability. 9s to whatever degree, 11 9s or whatever it is, Panzura has taken the power of AWS and brought that locally to my office space, so that what Girish's AWS system holds, Panzura presents. And I'm telling you, you talk about a simple, easy button, a button that is smart. Yes, Panzura has allowed me to be smart. It's allowed my company to do much smarter work. Is it secure? Absolutely. I don't worry about Panzura, and I don't worry about what's happening on the filer. And is it simple? Like I said, I never have to walk into work and go, I wonder what's going on with Panzura today. I'm going to have to open it up and take a look and make sure all things are up and running. It just works. So there you go. That's my simple button. That's my one button discussion about how Panzura and AWS work together.
Great. Hey, Girish, I know you're still on here. So do you have any last thoughts? I did get a question or two here that I'll be reading in a second, but do you have anything to add to this?
First of all, I would like to thank Eric for talking so many good things about AWS. I mean, that's great. He touched upon the 11 nines of durability that S3 offers, and that is provided because the way our infrastructure is constructed. We have, when you keep your data on S3, it is kept across multiple AZs. So even if something was to happen to one AZ, you always have your data available, right? So it's a great backend for building these global file system solutions.
Great. I got a note here. One of our, I think it looks like maybe an existing customer, West Coast firm with only California locations. There was a short outage for AWS a few years back that affected mostly the East Coast customers, but nobody in the West Coast even experienced any outage. Is that kind of talking about those availability zones? Is that another way of putting that?
So availability zones are within a region. So in this case, I mean, you will have two separate regions, one on the east, the other one on the west. If you just look at our services like S3, we offer a replication mechanism where you can easily replicate your data over from one region to another. That gives you an additional copy on top of the 3 copies that you're already getting with S3 within a region.
Yeah, as the note said, they've had 0 AWS downtime since April of 2015. So what is that? That's 6 years, 0 downtime. That's pretty darn impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another question that came in, do end users see a difference after the switch to Panzura? I think, Eric, you spoke to that with regards to productivity at the local level, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the amazing thing. I mean, this is something that really impressed me. So early on, again, long time ago, Panzura is not an all or nothing solution. You can deploy it as needed. And I can tell you, so this is my deployment story, right? So we populated the filers. We got our data up into AWS through the filers. And we were switching from a straight up Windows server, and we were going to have to move into Panzura. We told our folks, okay, log out on Friday night by 6 p.m. Eastern time, and don't plan on getting in until Monday morning. So everybody logged out at 6. We started to do our last ingestion of data, and it took about 15 minutes. And we went, okay, now what? We were done. All we had to do at that point was change the login script so that people could see their drive letters like they normally saw. People came in Monday and went to work just like they always had, right? So go back to this easy button thing, right? Here's this thing that Steve Jobs came up with. And one of the things I don't know how he said it, but one of the things I remember him saying was something to the effect of, I want to give people something new without making them having to learn something new. right? So what we did was we gave everybody in our organization this experience, this local file experience, and they didn't have to do anything different. All of their software just worked. Everything they had ever done just worked the way it always had, but the experience was now global. Everybody in our organization was now opening files in seconds, where before it had taken a couple days to receive the thumb drive, or it had taken 10 minutes to open because all the data that was going back and forth over the internet, even with things in place that should have done caching, it still wasn't working. Panzura solved it, and no, nobody had to learn anything new or different. They just came in, went to work, and it was like, this is amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thank you for that, Eric and Girish. Thank you both for your input on this. There was one last question. What if I want to keep my storage on premise? Do you have a non-cloud version? We didn't really talk about that, but for some customers, they want to have a completely dark site. And if customers need that, and that could be for medical or for government purposes and such like that, your object store can be still on premise if you really want it to be. You could maybe back it up to the cloud. That would be probably a good thing to do. But you can run Panzura strictly on premise and not utilize a cloud object store. You can have an on-premise object store and still communicate with multiple different offices. So that was another question that just came in.
It's an interesting discussion, though. I would like to talk with anyone who has those ideas. And I'm not just trying to help Girish and his business out, but I'll tell you, you can run file stores on-prem. You're probably not going to have 11 nines of uptime with your own data store.
There you go.
That's the
There
amazing thing, right? That is the
Yeah.
amazing thing. So when you do have a file storage in the cloud, though, your internet connections do become more important. And so you should have multiple internet connections, a primary, secondary, and stuff like that. So that's a good thing to know.
Well, Girish and Eric, thank you guys both for being a part of the panel. We really, truly appreciate this as part of a webinar series. I actually should have mentioned, Eric, I wanted to call you Iron Man, but we'll talk about that. That's why you need to go to the next webinar we're going to have, Protect and Defend, and we'll talk about why Eric is considered Iron Man, at least in my world, and finding about stopping data threats before they trip you up. So that's August 19th. We'd love to have you join us if you would. Thank you all for joining. Eric and Girish, thanks so much for you guys for your help with this.
Yeah, you're
Thanks
very
a lot,
welcome.
You guys have a great week.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.